Welcome back, football fanatics, to the First and 10 Club with me, your host, Mark D. We are heading into week 10 in the NFL, and it is our Thursday show. So, we're going to talk about players we like, the players we dislike. We're going to give you our bold predictions, and I've got a doozy of one this week. And we're going to give you our game picks. And then, of course, we'll run out the clock with some interesting topics just to give you my 2 cents. So I'm not going to waste a lot of time. We're going to get right into it this week. Let's start talking about players and teams that we like for this week. And the first one I'm going to go to, I've been off of them a little bit for the past couple weeks. We're talking about defenses I like this week, and that is one Baltimore Ravens. And it's surprising because you wouldn't think that you would be picking a team against the New England Patriots, but the New England Patriots just are not what they used to be. They are lacking a steady group of weapons offensively. Cam Newton every week seems to be less and less likely to honestly measure up as a NFL quarterback. The arm strength is really starting to show that it's not quite there. And frankly, we'll talk about it a little bit later. But I just don't see him having the rushing day, which usually is what salvages New England's offense. I love the defense in this one. I think Baltimore's defense not only has a good day, but this could be one of those games where the defense for Baltimore is the offense. We've seen that already this year, and I could see it happening in this game too. Quarterbacks I like this week. I'm going to give you a trio of them for my picks for plays, but then we're going to talk about some other quarterbacks I like a little bit later on. Um, So I'm starting out with Josh Allen and Kyler Murray. In this week's edition of Who Can Score the Most Points. Last week it was Seattle versus Buffalo. This week it's going to be Arizona versus Buffalo. Um, I like both these guys. I expect it to be a high scoring game. I think this is gold for fantasy. Obviously, if you have these guys, you're starting them on a normal basis. Um, so there's not a whole lot to be said there. Arizona's a little bit tougher against the pass, but they're dealing with some injuries. Patrick Peterson can only play one side of the field. Uh, so, uh, yeah, I expect there to be a lot in this game. I think you're going to see some. Uh, Let me revert this. This might not necessarily be the best passing game for them. I think it will be. But I could actually see the two of them, Allen and Murray, getting this done on the ground. So, very interesting game, very intriguing game. I'm excited to watch it. Probably my number one game this week that I want to get exposure to in terms of watching, making sure that I get to really take the game in live and not have to watch it on replays. Uh, and then another one that I'm really high on because, well, I think it's just been proven at this point. The defense is a sieve, which is surprising, but I'm going to go with one Jared Goff against the Seattle Seahawks. The Seattle Seahawks are just giving up points left and right to quarterbacks. It's almost just too easy to make this choice, but in case you have not heard yet, in case you are not aware, Go Goff this week. They have the wide receiver tools, the weapons. I expect the LA Rams to put up points against Seattle. I don't think they get the win. I think Seattle bounces back this week, but um, I don't expect it to be a low scoring game in any way, shape, or form. Running backs that I absolutely love this week. Well, I'm going to go. I'm picking another running back coming off of the shelf, going up against Houston. I'm going for Chubb. Uh, I've I think Houston can be run on. I think it's been proven, and I just believe that Chubb is going to come back. I don't expect him to be overly limited. So, absolutely love Chubb this week. Glad to have him back. And the other one I'm going to pick this week that I like, look, you got to take it with a grain of salt. I don't expect him to have this massive statistic day, but if you're playing DFS, he's a sneaky play. Adrian Peterson, going up against Washington, we talk about the narrative, we talk about, the revenge game factor. He's still getting the early down work in Detroit, and I honestly believe he is going to have probably his strongest game of the year this year or this week. So look at Adrian Peterson. Wide receivers that I'm high on this week. Two I'm going to give you. One is John Brown. We talked about earlier that Patrick Peterson. I expect Stefon Diggs to see a lot of Patrick Peterson. You also have, again, you're going to hear a theme here. You have John Brown, revenge game narrative, uh, possibly dealing with injuries. So you're dealing with maybe a fourth corner, third corner here. I expect to see him have a very big game. I expect to see him get open deep a couple times against the Cardinals. John Brown, like him. The other one I like this week, squeaky wheel. It's the squeaky wheel narrative, and it's not like he's a bad player. Tampa Bay absolutely shit the bed last week. There's no point in arguing that anymore. We know it. We know that's what happened. The alarming thing was how often Antonio Brown was targeted. And you know who came out and said stuff afterwards? The guys who were on the team, the guys who have been there afterwards. Mike Evans, Godwin. And then, let's put the cherry on top of this Sunday. The coach comes out, and I like Bruce Arians for this reason. He does not mince words. He basically called Tom Brady out. He makes the comment of how Mike Evans was open on almost every play and just wasn't targeted. I think that gets remedied this week. I expect Mike Evans to have a very big week. I, look, Carolina, we said it on our review. Carolina's a good team. They're going to be competitive, but their defense isn't there yet. I expect Mike Evans to have a great bounce back week. I expect him to get targeted. Absolutely roll with Mike Evans this week. And tight ends that I am just throwing a dart at. No, but that's what it feels like. You have Kelsey on a bye. You have so many injuries at the tight end position. You have players that just did not amount to be what we thought they would be this year. Um, so I'm going to roll out with these two. I do like Logan Thomas against Detroit. Um, I think he can have a very big week this week. Uh, I think now I think Washington's offense got kind of thrown up in the air with the injury to Allen and Smith having to come in an emergency situation. I think there'll be a little bit more of a planned game plan for Alex Smith this week. And Alex Smith is not necessarily the big throw the ball down the field quarterback every single play. You saw it when he had success in San Francisco with Vernon Davis, when he was with the Chiefs with Kelsey. I believe Logan Thomas has a very big week this week as a safety valve for Alex Smith. And Alex Smith, I love him. I love the storyline, but he just does not look right. Not 100% there yet, and that's understandable. But I think Logan Thomas this week serves a very big role in the Washington offense. And then another tight end who I'm usually not very high on, but going up against Philadelphia, I know Philadelphia is coming off of the bye, and I do expect them to be a little bit better put together. I do expect Evan Ingram, though, to have a big week against them. They have struggled tremendously against the tight end. And on top of that, Evan Ingram has really become the main focus of the passing game for one Daniel half shilling Jones, Danny Dime, like the Danny Dimes thing seems to be dead, thank God. So that's who I like this week. Talking about players I don't like this week. Well, for defenses I don't like this week, one, I'm going to go with the Los Angeles Rams. Like I said, I expect this game to have a ton of points in it. And yes, Buffalo showed that you can force Russell Wilson into mistakes, but it's still just for DFS purposes. I don't see the Rams having that strong day that you would want out of them. Another team, kind of for the same reasons, they might make a play, but I'm going with my gut on this one, and we're going to talk about it later. It's going to be a bonus game pick for you. Um, I'm not big on the Pittsburgh Steelers this week. Watching what happened against Dallas, you could say that the easy narrative here would be that they're going to bounce back this week. They get another weak team in Cincinnati, so forth and so on. Well, let's be very clear here. Joe Burrow is not Gilbert. Joe Burrow, the offensive weapons that Cincinnati has, I think they're going to give the Steelers a lot to handle this week. And I know the Steelers have a great defense. I'm not taking anything away from that. I know they're the undefeated team, but undefeated teams all too often stumble at a weird spot. And there's a lot going on in Pittsburgh right now with COVID and COVID issues. So I'm just not real high on Pittsburgh this week. Quarterbacks, I'm not high on. Well, the first one, we kind of talked about it earlier. One, Cam Newton. I think just more and more you are seeing a farewell tour for Cam Newton. Maybe he sticks around as a backup somewhere. I just don't see it. I don't see him as a starting caliber quarterback anymore in the NFL. The shoulder injuries seriously hindered him. The injuries to his lower body have hindered him. He's not the same quarterback he was 5 years ago, not anywhere even close. And it's a shame because he wasn't a dynamic electric player, and it's just not there. He really is a shell. And he really makes his bread and butter, like I said, on that goal line. If it's on the goal line, you know it's going to be 3 attempts for him to push forward for that 1 yard. And I just don't see that happening against Baltimore. I really don't. So I am out on Cam Newton this week. And the other quarterback I'm out on is Mr. I suck in primetime games, and that is Kirk Cousins, playing on Monday night against the Chicago Bears. And God, does it pain me to want to say that I think the Chicago Bears are going to win this game. But Chicago has a damn good defense. Kirk notoriously comes up small in primetime games. I just can't go there. I can't in good conscience tell you to roll Kirk Cousins. Running backs. Well, one of them is a player that I'm super, high on. I like him, but I think he just sees one of those down weeks this week because he's going up against just a tremendous defense, and that is King Henry. Derrick Henry going up against Indianapolis tonight. I think he's going to have a hard time running the ball. They have one of the premier run defenses, and I think that's going to be Indianapolis's game plan is to stop Henry. They're going to make Tannehill beat them through the air, which I think ultimately happens, but I don't want to get too far ahead of that until we get into our game picks. And then a pair of running backs that I am just 100% out on. I know the game script is there for this potentially to be a good game, and maybe they squeeze a score out here or there, but I am out. Kenyon Drake is supposedly going to be back this week. That should not excite anybody. Um, I just can't buy into the Kenyon Drake, Chase Edmonds timeshare now. And that's really what you're going to deal with here. You have no clue what the backfield's going to look like with him coming out of an injury. They're going up against a very good defense in the Bills. This is just an area that I would want to stay away from. The only person out of that backfield that I would want running the ball or that I would trust, especially for DFS, would be one Kyler Murray. And unfortunately, you can't slot him at the running back position. Wide receivers, we're just going to stay in that game. I do think Kyler Murray is going to throw the ball around, but Fitzgerald's been getting looks. The ageless wonder, he's definitely been involved in the offense, and they have a connection, Murray and Christian Kirk. So I'm not super high on DeAndre Hopkins again this week. One, he's going to go up against Tre'Davious White, and again, I think it comes back to this. It's a new wide receiver in a new place. And as I said multiple times, I'm going to keep saying it. Keep this in the back of your mind heading into your fantasy drafts next year. D-Hop is not going to have his normal crazy season this year, and that's going to make him drop a little bit in fantasy drafts. And I'm not saying he's going to be a third or fourth rounder, but if you can steal him in the second round, that is absolutely a steal because it takes time for wide receivers in new locations to get acclimated. And I think that's all you're seeing here. It's not a knock on him. It's not saying, that he's a bad wide receiver. That just seems to be the nature of the game. This next one that I'm out on, yes, I'm out on him. It's almost unfair to put him on the list, but I'm going to make it very clear. Hollywood Brown, one, going up against Gilmore, going up against the New England secondary that does try to limit wide receivers and does seem to do that. I know it might paint a picture after what happened against the Jets. You saw Mims, you saw Perryman get open for these deep passes. Don't buy it. Just don't buy it. I'm not there. I think you are chasing fool's gold. I don't think Hollywood Brown is it. Yeah, maybe he gets you a deep ball and a touchdown, but that is just a risky play to depend on that. The floor, in my opinion, is too low, and the ceiling is not high enough to take the risk. And the third one on this list is a little bit surprising. Look, if you have him, in no way, shape, or form am I telling you to bench him. And that goes for D Hop too. If you have D Hop, you have to roll with him. You play the guys who got you there. You play those first 5 round picks, no matter what. It's the same thing with this guy. I said he's matchup proof, but I just don't expect him to have this incredible breakout game, and that is one DK Metcalf. I expect him to see Jalen Ramsey the entire game. And yes, he might get a couple catches, and yes, maybe he even scores, but he's going to be limited. I would expect this to be more of a Tyler Lockett game. That's where I expect exposure to go to. Tyler Lockett, more the tight ends. DK Metcalf, I think, is going to have his hands full. Ramsey thrives in these games. Let's face it, the league realizes Metcalf now is a superstar. They see it, they believe it. Ramsey is going to take that. He's going to post. That's going to be his motivation. Trust me. His stat line, DK Metcalf stat line over the season is going to be Jalen Ramsey's motivation. It's on his bulletin board. So don't expect Metcalf to have an incredible game. Again, if you have him in season long leagues, listen to what I'm saying so I don't get blown up afterwards. If you have DK Metcalf in season long leagues, you never bench him. He is unbenchable. He is matchup proof. You play him. What I'm saying is don't expect to see him put up 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. And if he does, great. It's just probably unlikely. Definitely staying away from him for DFS standpoint. Tight ends, I'm not a fan of this week. I'm not a fan of the Buffalo tight ends this week. If there's one thing that the Cardinals have been very stingy against, in my opinion, it's the tight ends. They have not had great things. And last week, you saw the ball get thrown around to multiple tight ends. Kyle Allen absolutely loves finding them in the end zone. I don't see that happening this week. I think it's going to be a more traditional wide receiver game, maybe even more coming out of the backfield. I do expect Diggs to get his. It might not be the greatest game, but I expect Brown to have a good game. Cole Beasley would be more of the sneaky play there. I just don't see the likes of Knox if he plays and Croft. I don't see them getting the touchdowns that they have been getting from Allen this week, especially against Arizona. And that's the only way they're really viable. Another tight end that I'm just not super high on this week is Waller. Denver's kind of been a little back and forth this year. But I just don't. I like Justin Simmons being able to kind of put the kibosh there. Just not super high on Waller this week. I believe that if they are going to beat the Broncos, it's going to be more prolific passing, deeper passing. So I like Ruggs this week. I like Renfro this week, and I like Jacobs this week out of LA. And I think you're going to see a down week for Waller. So that's who I like, who I don't like this week. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Am I right? Am I wrong? Look, I'm not giving you these guys as locks. I'm telling you in my summation, that's where my mind is leading to. Again, with a lot of these big name players, keep in mind one of the comments I get a lot is, how am I going to bench Kyler Murray? I'm not telling you to bench these guys, or or we'll use the D Hop Metcalf. I'm not telling you to bench them. I'm telling you that I expect them to maybe struggle a little bit this week, maybe not put up the highest stat line. Same way on players I do like. I'm not saying that they're going to be the number one fantasy player. That's what my bold predictions come in. What I'm saying is I like their matchups. I like what the game script and possibility could be for them. So that's where the direction that I'm leaning and where I'm going to try and point you guys. And with that, it's going to take me into my bold predictions. So, players that I like, dislike. Well, yeah, there's 2 of them that I liked that are going to be involved in my bold predictions. So, first off is John Brown for the Buffalo. We talked about the revenge game narrative, and yes, we're going to have 2 bold predictions based on the revenge game narrative. For John Brown, I absolutely expect to see him break 100 yards and 2 touchdowns in this game. I again, we talked about the fact that Diggs is going to see probably the majority of Patrick Peterson. The secondary is a little beat up in Arizona right now. So I believe John Brown, 100 yards, 2 touchdowns over the top, at least for one big one. And that's what I'm expecting this week from him. And then also in a revenge game narrative, we're going to move forward onto the Detroit Washington game. And I do believe that Adrian Peterson this week scores not one, but 2 touchdowns. I'm not saying he's going to have a great, um, my co host. I'm not going to say that Adrian Peterson's going to have an amazing stat line, but I do think that when they get down in the red zone, I think he punches in 2 touchdowns this week against his old team. This is my big um, bold prediction. And that is, I think this week you are going to see a full out heavyweight brawl amongst the MVP candidates. I think it's becoming very clear who your MVP candidates are, with maybe a dark horse here or there. And I think you're going to start seeing them putting that on display. And those four that I'm talking about are Aaron Rodgers, Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson, and a dark horse, Josh Allen. Now, I know Allen is a long shot, but I think he's going to start trying to make his claim. He was early, seemed to be right there, went into a little bit of a lull, came back, and I think he's going to try and continue that this week. Murray's might be the favorite at this point in terms statistically. Wilson might be the feel-good story, and Rodgers is trying to show that he could be the MVP every single year. And I think this week, this is probably my boldest prediction I've ever made. I think all four of those quarterbacks, Rodgers, Murray, Allen, and Wilson, in an attempt to outduel the other one, all throw for at least 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. So get your popcorn ready, because I think you're going to see a lot of passing and scoring this week. And I'm going to give you a bonus bold prediction as we go into our game picks. So this is not one of my 4 game picks, but it's going to basically be one, because this week the Pittsburgh Steelers, well, they they almost lost to Dallas. Ben is playing on 2 bad knees. He's on the COVID list, so he's not practicing, amongst other players who are not practicing. And everyone is saying, if Ben doesn't play, well, I'm going to flip the script on this one. Even if Ben plays, the Cincinnati Bengals in week 10 of the NFL season are going to snap Pittsburgh Steelers' undefeated season. Yeah, I'm calling it. I think it is going to be the win that Joe Burrow hangs his season on. I don't think Cincinnati's going to make a run or anything like that, but they have the offensive weapons there. And I think somehow, some way in this game, maybe it's sloppy, maybe whatnot, but I think Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals in a division game knock off the Pittsburgh Steelers this week. Maybe I'm crazy. It's a bold prediction. That's why it's a bold prediction. But yep, that's one of my game picks. And, getting into my normal 4, don't forget, I'll always post the rest of my game picks, but part of it's just a gut feeling, and that's not a great way to bet, but there's just too much going on. Pittsburgh looked flat playing against Dallas, and like I said, you're starting to see that the season is starting to take a toll on Ben. It's a long season. They had an early bye because of COVID. I think Ben would love a break right now. And look, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Ben pulls a typical Ben Roethlisberger moment, comes out with 2 bad knees, and throws for 350 yards and 5 touchdowns, and I look like a fool. But I think maybe he does, and Cincinnati still beats him because I think Joe Burrow can match him. So on to my real game picks, or the rest of my game picks. My lock for the week: Green Bay over Jacksonville. I think this will be an interesting and competitive game. I think Luton is wiry enough, um, to use a quote from the replacements, but I like Luton. I think he brings a little bit to the table. He's new, but now there's some game film on him. But I do think it's a little bit more of a competitive game. I don't think it'll be a blowout, but I think Jacksonville wins this game easily. As I said, they have a very weak defense, and Aaron Rodgers is going to take advantage of that. Aaron Rodgers, like I said, from I think week 2, he is trying to prove a point this year, and he's going to continue trying to prove a point. Not to mention, it's in Green Bay, so that's always an added factor. I'm going to take Tampa Bay over Carolina. Tampa Bay got embarrassed last week, and I know that, every week's a new week, but they are going to come out and they are going to silence critics. Especially Christian McCaffrey is going to be out this week, or it's looking very, very probable that he's out this week. Tampa Bay is just going to take advantage of this. The defense is going to come back, I think. The offense, I think, will maybe reluctantly correct itself, but Tampa Bay over Carolina this week. It's 30. I hate picking these games because they're within my division, but I'm gonna take the Philadelphia Eagles over the Giants. I have a feeling coming out of the bye, Philly's getting healthy for starters. I should have Miles Sanders back this week. Goddard's back now. I know he played last week, and that really left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. But I think with the bye week and a week of practice, you're going to see Goddard featured in it. You have Fulgham. You have the rookie and Jalen Reagor. I actually am kind of expecting Philly to look a little bit more like the Philly teams we've seen over the past couple of years. So not only do I think they're going to beat the Giants, I think they're going to beat them fairly handily. And then picking tonight's game, the Thursday night game. Now this one's tough because Tennessee has kind of struggled a little bit here in some games. And, Indy is kind of back and forth. They have a great defense. Some games they look great, some games they look terrible. I'm going to put it down to this. As long as it doesn't come down to a field goal, Tennessee beats the Indianapolis Colts. And I'll leave it at that. Time to run out the clock. A couple of things that I have. Nothing crazy pressing here that I'm going to go, off my soapbox on. So NFL, come on, let's come up with some, good topics this week. I've been missing ranting. But let's start with masks and the whole COVID thing. So coaches continue to get fined left and right. And what I can't seem to understand is why do coaches have to pull the mask away from their face or pull it down to talk? I wear a mask out in public every day, and I can talk to somebody with a mask on and they can understand me perfectly fine. So I always find it funny watching on the sideline when they have their mask on and they go to talk to somebody and they pull the mask away. Like, you don't need to do that. And it seems to be something that I'm seeing more prevalent in just football. Like, I watch baseball and it didn't seem like the baseball coaches were doing that. They would just go out there and talk. So I don't understand what the need is in for football for them to pull the mask either down or away from their mouth when they're talking. Like, it doesn't make sense to me on that one. Same thing. It's just putting a piece of cloth in front of you. Look, see, I have a piece of cloth in front of my mouth. You look tight. You can still hear me. I don't know. It, it's just a little thing I noticed. I guess it's not a big deal, but when you have coaches getting fined hundreds of thousands of dollars because they don't wear a mask, I don't know. Maybe that maybe $100,000 just isn't that big of a deal to these coaches. I don't get it. I would have no problem wearing a mask, knowing that that much money was at jeopardy. But so going away from COVID, let's talk about fantasy football and running backs. You are absolutely seeing it this year, and I hate to tell you, it's going to become more and more prevalent. Um, I know we talk about the workhorse back, and then we talked about the dreaded timeshares. And that's when you were drafting, that's what you would be looking at. You want to try and get the guy that has the backfield pretty much all to their own or the 3 down running back. And then after that, you're looking, to try and look for, the timeshare. And, okay, well, you have the guy that's your first 2, and this guy comes in on 3rd downs, but he has a role, so let's grab him. I think more and more, maybe it's because of COVID, but I think COVID's starting to show and maybe expose us a little bit. You're going to start seeing teams more and more that are just not going to have those those workhorse backs or those every down backs. Um, so wow, especially healthy, the Christian McCaffreys, I'm assuming when he comes back, Saquon Barkley, Dalvin Cook, these every down workhorse running backs. Aaron Jones is another great example. Derrick Henry. They're just so rare that wow, they're like gold. And I think you're going to see more and more these teams just employing a, a, a battalion of running backs, if you want to call them that. A stable of running backs with all specific roles. And I think you're seeing that. I'm going to use my team as an example, the Washington football team. Antonio Gibson is pretty clear is you know, he is who they believe is they're going to be their running back, the first and second down running back. So you see him primarily in the game, and then game script flips, and now all of a sudden you have J.D. McKissick as the check down king. So you have, every third down opportunity now it's him until you get to goal line, and then in goal line now it's Peyton Barber, which gag. I don't even understand that. But now it's Peyton Barber sending 3, and now they just activated Love off of the practice or not practice squad, the IR, and he's practicing again. And they're saying that they expect to see a role for him too. Um, and I think that's going to be the scary thing for fantasy purposes. You're going to have to figure out not just one, not two, not three, but 4 running backs in the hot hand. And let's face it, it's the New England model. How many years have we dealt with this with New England? That one week it's Harris, next week it would be Tony Michelle, and James White kind of dropped off this year, but you have Rex Burkhead. You have just all these different possible weapons out of the backfield, and it makes it very, very difficult to hang your hat on one of them for fantasy purposes. So it's really becoming a challenge, again, and adding just an immense amount of value to those very, very few running backs that you can just plug into your lineup and start without any worry. So yeah, that's interesting. All right, my final kneel down tonight, I guess I have a little bit of a soapbox, is playoffs. The NFL this week voted on a contingency that if games would get canceled, that they would add an 8th playoff team. Why? Like, you're starting to take away from the point of the game. Like, I don't want half of the league to get into the playoffs. And that's what it is now. Half of the league, if you go to 8 teams on each side, it's 16 teams, and half of the league goes to the playoffs. I hate it. Absolutely hate it. I think it's the stupidest idea. For what? So you can say, oh, my team made it to the playoffs. For the love of God, the NFC East this year is probably going to send somebody to the playoffs that might not even get to 7 wins. That's disgusting for a 6-10 team, a 5-11 team to win a division and host a playoff game. If you want to get together and vote on rules, and I've said this over and over again, and it would absolutely affect our division, I think you should have to qualify for the playoffs. I think absolutely you should go back to 6 teams. I know it never will because it's money. It's all about money. It's all about revenue. But I think after this season, you absolutely put it back to 6 teams. And in order to qualify for the playoffs, you have to win at least 8 games. You cannot have a losing season and go to the playoffs. It is everything that is wrong with this country. Winners go to the playoffs. Awarding a shitty division a playoff spot is dumb. I know other people have said this. I'm not reinventing the wheel. I'm not groundbreaking here, but I agree with them. If you cannot get to 8 wins, then you don't deserve to be in the playoffs. And if you win your division with 7 wins, 7-9, you don't go to the playoffs. There is another wild card team added. Because I think it's really messed up that you could have a team that could be 10-6 in another division that has, use the West as an example. Say Seattle's 11-5, and you have the Rams at 10-6, and you have the Cardinals at 10-6, and one of them could miss a playoff spot because the Eagles are 7-8-1. That's not right. And I know Seattle did this years ago, and then they won a first round playoff game. I don't care. You didn't earn it. That's my final thoughts on that. I know it's not going to make a difference. I know I'm not going to change the league, but you're just watering down what the regular season is all about. When half the league is going to the playoffs, that's all you're doing. So that's this Thursday's show. We're trying to keep them a little bit shorter for you so you can, you know, watch them a little bit quicker. That way you can get the show in before the game tonight. But hope you enjoy what you're seeing. Hope you're enjoying the shows. We do them every Tuesday and Thursday. Tuesday is our weekly recap. Thursday is our picks and predictions. For Mark D, thanks for watching the First and 10 Club. If you like what you're seeing and you haven't done so, click subscribe. If you don't want to miss the shows, make sure you follow us, share, promote us. If you got questions, ask below or on our Twitter. But don't be shy. Let us know what you think. With that being said, let's go football.